thanks to everyone being here. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and every day in May here on Mental Health Coalition, you're going to see musicians, actors, authors, and advocates opening up about our journeys with mental health. And they're going to have 31 conversations in 31 days. And when I was asked to host one of these chats, I immediately thought of Emily. Because one of the goals of these chats is to be vulnerable, to open up about our own journeys, and to bring in somebody who we have gone on that journey with. And I thought of you, Emily, especially because of the last 2 years we've had together.
Oh my gosh.
So this afternoon, we are going to talk about some of our darker moments that we have survived. We're going to open up a little bit about some of the things that we have gone through. We only have a short period of time, so I do just want to flag for folks who are joining in tonight. We are going to talk about our journeys with mental health, and a slight trigger warning that some of the things we talk about might be a little triggering for you. So just heads up there. So I am joined this evening with my good friend, Emily. Emily is a physically disabled woman, an educator, and an advocate. She is currently working with Notre Dame's Accessibility Office to ensure that students with physical disabilities, mental health diagnoses, long-haul COVID, and invisible illnesses are supported. And Emily's pronouns are she and her. My pronouns are he and him. And Emily, thank you for being willing to have this conversation this evening and to be vulnerable a little bit with me.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Thank you for having me. We were through the rough and tumble on the campaign trail, and were forced to be vulnerable with one another during what amounted to, a really difficult year. So I'm so glad that you asked me to join you. I'm glad to be here. And thank you to One to One.
Yes. So let's just jump in and let's talk about some things. And it's a little different this afternoon. I think we're typically used to like Oreo sandwiching hard experiences, and we try to take off the edge of things that are really hard. But this afternoon, we want to dive right into the hard things and talk about how we got through them and who helped us through them. So one of the first things I thought about, especially on the campaign trail, was one night in particular where I was having a bit of a panic attack in the car. And at the height of the campaign, when things were getting really, really hard, they were getting pretty nasty in the media, and politics wasn't my arena. And so I didn't have the training necessarily to always take, the bad with a grain of salt. And there was one evening in particular where people from my own community showed up to protest me. And people were being pretty aggressive. People were spitting at the car and knocking on the windows and yelling and shouting. And that was really hard for me to feel like I wasn't being enough for other people, especially people in my own community, to feel like I had let people down. And in that moment, I felt like I wasn't quite sure how I was going to get through. And you were there. You were in the car with me. And I thought maybe you could just talk first about what you saw, what you recognized, and then how you took action to help me through that time.
Yeah, that's a great question about a pretty tough memory, right? So your description was exactly right. And I think it was difficult for me to see, as someone that supported you professionally, but also as a friend, to see that folks were reacting to your vulnerability, to your identity, to your presence in a space so negatively, right? Which leads us to only want to close ourselves off and not open ourselves up to the world. And while there might have been, and while there were hundreds of people there that wanted to see you, that wanted to hear about you, who identified you, that with you, saw a role model in you, there were these folks that were kind of ruining it for everybody and reacting in a way that was coming, from a really hurtful place. So in that moment, again, as both a staffer and as a friend, trying the best I could to just walk you through that moment and to say, you know, one, this speaks more about them than it does about you. And two, just validating, which can be so beneficial in times of panic and anxiety and distress, validating that these people were jerks, and that they were they were the ones in that moment that were taking the low road, and again, that we're choosing to be so hurtful and aggressive. So just validating for you that, you know, that is not who you are, and the fact that you're not clapping back or yelling back or saying let's get in the car and go home in that moment spoke so much to your character as someone that was going to say, hey, I have shown up, I'm going to continue to show up even in this really tense moment. And you know, it was a tense evening. It started off that way from the beginning, but we made it through and we showed up for the folks that were in that room, who were standing in solidarity with you. We were there together, saying, you know, we're not going to be turned away. It was really powerful for me, you know, again, as a staffer and as a friend to push through something that was really painful.
I was so lucky to have you there because, especially in politics, but I think this is true for everyone, opening up about anxiety or depression, our fears, we are told that that makes us weaker, that we must be weaker human beings because we can't handle these situations. And in that moment, a large part of me wanted to run away. And I felt like, especially in politics, you can't make anything about yourself. And I knew I didn't want to disappoint people. And having you validate those feelings meant so much to me because I felt like I have to keep everything locked up inside, right? I have to show up for everybody. I have to be everything for everybody. And you like turning to me in the car and saying, no, you're right. This sucks. This is really bad. And we're going to get through it together. It meant a lot to me. We had many of those moments on the trail where we had to check in with one another. And I learned so much from you, especially because I'm an able-bodied person. And before I worked with you on the campaign trail, I didn't have to think so much about how people with physical disabilities navigate this world. And I consider myself an ally, but like we've talked about before, just because you think you're an ally doesn't mean you're, you know, done showing up for the people that you love and care for. And my eyes were sort of widened watching you navigate the world. And we were on airplanes and buses, lots of airplanes and trains. And yeah, and you specifically had to go through a lot every day trying to navigate spaces that oftentimes felt like and were purposely not built for you. What is it like navigating that sometimes?
Yeah, so Chasten, you know this obviously, and you mentioned, you know, that I'm a disabled woman, but for those at home, I am a person that uses a wheelchair. I have a physical disability, and also an invisible illness in mental health struggles. So, you know, Chasten, what you're specifically referring to, just navigating a world that was not built for someone with a physical disability, is something that hundreds of thousands of folks in our country experience every day. And I heard it best today, actually, from a man I know on Instagram, Carson Tuller. And I hope I'm pronouncing that last name right, but he is a man that uses a chair. And he hopped on his Instagram story and was talking about a shopping mall that he was trying to access that was not accessible to him, did not have ramps, exclusively had stairs. And I'm going to butcher this, and so I'm going to paraphrase, know that this is a paraphrase, but he just said that, you know, disabled people are so tired of being disappointed. We're so used to being disappointed, and not in a way that is like, oh, I'm disappointed that this wasn't a good hamburger, or I'm disappointed that this mall didn't have anything I wanted. I'm disappointed because I'm being turned away from experiences, from places, time and time again. And whether it's intentional or not, right, doesn't exactly matter, because we're at a place, we're on a frontier where we need to be doing better with physical access to spaces. So circling back, I was so grateful to have you as somebody in my life that could say, I'm disappointed too, right? I'm really frustrated for you. I think we so normalize just institutionalized ableism, even in ourselves. And so to have somebody be able to stop and say, I get it, you're not making this up. This is frustrating as hell, that we can't get onto this airplane, or that the train legitimately has no means of access to it, etc. And Chasten, you can attest that it happens so frequently. It's hard to even summarize. And I don't mean that to say, woe is me. But it was just so powerful to have somebody that, I mean, we were connected at the hip day in and day out, to have somebody else there through every experience with me to say, like, no, you're not just making this up. This is tricky. And we made it work. And I hope we stirred up a little good trouble along the way, bringing it to people's attention that, like, hey, this isn't right, or this isn't great, or we're going to choose to go to a different restaurant because you're not accessible, or we're going to, we're going to ask that you support us in this X, Y, and Z. So it was just so valuable. And you were an incredible ally in that, and that doesn't necessarily come natural for folks, but it's something we should all be working towards.
Something I really appreciate about our friendship, and to give folks sort of an idea, Emily was my body woman on the campaign. So to be a body person on a campaign, typically when you're working with the principal, you're glued to their hip. And so Emily's job, our team was much smaller than my husband's. Emily was telling me where we were going. She was briefing me on where we were going, who we were meeting, everything from, like, you're going to walk in this door, you're going to turn left, and you were also, like, coordinating the travel and the food. And Emily basically kept me, like, fed and alive for over a year. And to get through that experience together, we had to come at it from I think a unique angle in a work environment where I feel like we became really good friends. But in order for that working relationship to survive as well, we had to be really vulnerable with one another, sometimes even when it was really uncomfortable. And we had to learn to be okay with vocalizing our feelings, checking in with one another that, my cup is empty. I have nothing else to give today. This is a really bad day for me. But also verbalizing our support for one another when we notice the other person is hurting, or going through something that's really hard. Something that I felt, and I wrote about it a little bit in the book, but I feel like you could spend so much time talking about it, is when we are constantly giving to other people, sometimes we forget to take care of ourselves. And I felt like that was common on the campaign trail. And I think it's very common in politics, especially as a first. You're giving and you're giving and you're giving. And we always kind of talk about your cup being full and empty, right? You're pouring, you're giving some to everybody. And at the end of the day, there's nothing left in the pitcher, right? On the campaign trail, I felt like, we'd wake up, we'd go to like 10 different events. We'd do like a fundraiser at the end of the day. We'd be, part of my, I guess, brand is just like constant vulnerability. So I was never really in politics. So I just felt like, hey, I've gone through all these experiences. So I was throwing out, like, I ran away from home and I was a suicidal teenager and coming out was really hard and I slept in my car, and I was a first generation college student. I had no idea what I was doing. I have a mountain of student debt, and I'm just like putting everything out there because I feel like these are so many topics that we don't discuss. And I wanted people to feel seen and to feel like someone had gone through something maybe that they had gone through, or to recognize something that they have felt. And by the end of the day, I felt like I had nothing else to give. And one way that I sort of got through that was having someone at my side saying, you don't have to give any more.
Right.
And some nights we wanted to unwind.
Eat your Thai food. Turn on HBO.
Yeah.
No, it's that vulnerability fatigue that I know we've talked about. There's physical and mental and emotional fatigue, right? But I think there's this kind of next level fatigue that comes with being a person in a space that is representing their identity in such a raw and real way, both visibly and verbally, and having people, and you did this so beautifully to your point, just opening up about your own story and inviting people into that and hearing the ways that they would, stop you on a rope line and say, I was also homeless as a teen, or stop you on the rope line and say, I'm thinking about coming out to my parents, and you gave me that courage, right? And that was so beautiful. But you're also navigating people, like we talked about at the top of the live, that are not as kind, but every single day coming in and just leaving it all out there. And I brought your beautiful memoir.
Emily.
You all haven't. Get it in the frame, people. Which is, I have something to tell you, but but one of my favorite pieces, I was thinking about this coming into today, or favorite quotes is, but people aren't looking for perfection in their role models. They're looking for something they can recognize, right? They're not looking for that perfectly polished, shiny beacon. As much as we sometimes feel that onus, I think sometimes they're looking for somebody that has some cracks just like them. And you did that so beautifully. But there's so much exhaustion that comes with that. So, and so not only were we running on empty physically, but our cups were low for both of us. But it was so cathartic to be able to your point, just open up to one another in really difficult moments, or when we were frustrated or tired or needed a nap or had feedback for each other, and just say, like, this is what I need right now. Let's get through this together. So it was a tough journey, but I don't think that we named that enough, going back to the fatigue piece, because we can all experience even if we're not, on a campaign trail on the road 7 days a week. So just showing up in spaces that either aren't built for us, or into which we're carrying, a certain identity can be exhausting.
Yeah. So I thought maybe I was going to get booted from the chat because I just got my time limit for the day warning. And which I think is a perfect segue into my next question for you. How do you show up for yourself, and how do you set boundaries? I think setting boundaries is really important. So for example, I have deleted Twitter from my phone this year. That's one of the best things I've ever done. And I started setting time limits on social media so that I'm not constantly surrounding myself. Because I know sometimes, most of the time when we go on social media, it's kind of a downward spiral experience where we start to question our worth. Like scrolling past people with six packs and like, well, I feel worse about myself every time I'm on here. So how are you setting boundaries, and how do you take care of yourself?
Yes, that is a great question. I too have a social media time limit on my phone, which I admittedly sometimes ignore, but I try to at least be aware of, because it isn't, I feel like I can pinpoint the day when I paused and was like, this is hurtful, not helpful. This is not a good use of time. This has obviously been very, very difficult to do over the past year, certainly not in person, but I've really just tried to stay connected with my people over the phone or in a quick text, or now in distanced gatherings. But it's just so important for me. I think where I get my energy from those around me. And then two, and this is kind of like, I don't know what, not something I would have seen in myself before, but really have tried to reconnect with nature, which is sometimes hard to do in northern Indiana in the cold, but just trying to slow down and see the beauty in the world around me, which is, it sounds really fluffy, but is so healing and re-energizing. I've already been, I don't know about you, but I've already been feeling this like kind of simmering anxiety about things opening back up, which is beautiful and lovely. And there are now plans on the calendar again and things to do, but it's, we just go as people so frequently. And I'm already so conscious of like, okay, I need to be intentional about setting boundaries and about being okay with saying no to things or holding time just for myself, whether it be to go on a walk or get rest or eat or read a book, you know, just take that time. Don't feel like we have to always be going. So
I think we're constantly like, we just learn like just being is not enough, right? And one of the things I've been trying so hard to do this year is just give myself some grace.
right.
Grace to be alone, mindful. You know, it's not being lazy. Recharging your batteries is so important.
Right.
This conversation could go on for hours, which is a problem of ours, especially if we were like sitting at a Culver's, which we did often on the campaign trail. Thank you, Midwest. So, Emily, I think you have the ability to bring in Sam Brinton from the Trevor Project. So we are going to bring in Sam, who is the Vice President of Advocacy and Government Affairs at the Trevor Project, the world's largest organization for suicide prevention for LGBTQ youth. Sam's pronouns are they and them. And there you are. Welcome.
Hello, darlings. Wow, this conversation. I want this conversation to go on and on. I've been sitting here just like, you know, when you're like snapping along at the TV and you know that the actors don't ever like know that you're doing it, but you feel better. Like that's what it has felt like for the last 20 minutes. That validation of you're not making this up. The validation of vulnerable fatigue. Like as a person who is constantly in front of like state legislatures, pouring out my heart and then just like praying that they vote with me. Like I am right there with you with that moment of this is exhausting. This is exhausting. So thank you so much for making me feel like it's okay. It's okay to be exhausted because that's why we have that time away. So anyway, all that said, thank you so much.
Sam.
Thank you. Oh my God.
I think we need to affirm that for one another every single day. And we are all very grateful for the work you're doing over at the Trevor Project.
Thank you.
And I was thinking, you know, Emily and I, we have talked together a lot as friends about unwelcoming spaces. Spaces that I have felt I do not belong as a queer person. Emily talked a little bit earlier about spaces that are literally designed to exclude her. Can you tell us a little bit about it, talk about unwelcoming spaces and the toll that takes on your mental health, especially for LGBTQ plus people who are navigating those spaces?
Absolutely. I think remembering that how we treat others has such consequences, even if we don't see it. That moment of you had the really hard moment of that panic attack because of how someone was treating you, and even if they never saw it and knew it, we know it, right? We know that has lasting impact. At the Trevor Project, we're serving hundreds of thousands of crisis contacts, young people who are reaching out saying like, I'm hurting because of a lot of different ways that they're being treated. And let's be honest, they're not always calling us in celebration, right? This is moments of crisis. That crisis can get really bad. For example, trans and non-binary youth who are consistently discriminated against are more than twice as likely to attempt suicide as those who have not. And to try to end on kind of not like a happy note, but like the good statistic on spaces is that if you have an affirmative space, you know what, like you're a quarter as likely to attempt suicide. So like, again, it can really save lives if you have that one affirming place. Whether, like, for me, I'm a nerd, the nuclear engineer, right, is my background. And so for me, it was the classroom, right? That one place where someone would see me as I was, treat me with respect, use my pronouns, and say that this is your place to be you. That absolutely saved my life. And that's what we're trying to do at the Trevor Project all the time, is try to provide, like, even if it's over a text, like, that is trying to provide that space, even if it's in your bedroom on a night where you're kind of feeling lost and alone, reminding you that you're not, can be a way to honestly save lives.
It's so important, Sam. And I hope for any parents or teachers watching right now, we can help you understand that you might think that you are a safe space, but you actually have to put in some work to help other people know that you are a safe space. Because you can go through life thinking, I'm an ally. But if people don't know that you're an ally, it's going to be a lot harder for them to open up to you. So sometimes we have to look at our friends and say, I love you so much, and if you ever want to talk to me about anything, if you're ever feeling down, you can call me any time of day. I don't know about some of you, but in the Midwest, sometimes we don't talk about our feelings like that, Catholic families, but you got to open up and say, I am here for you always. I recently had a friend come out to me, and it really helped telling this person about the Trevor Project as well. Saying, I will always be here for you. I will always be a source for you. But also, there are people that you can contact 24 hours a day if you are ever feeling down.
I love that you're saying this ally story, if I can, for 5 seconds, which is allyship's a verb. It's not a noun. Like, we have to do something with it. I love that we've had this conversation has been like, I let you know. I verbally told you it's okay to feel this way. Chasten, you verbally said to someone, this is not okay that you're not creating an affirming and accepting space for the folks who are working with me. Like, it's doing it. Knowing you're an ally is a great sticker, but like earn the gold star sticker by actually doing something. Sorry to jump in, but it's so important that it be active, that it not be just sitting around, but like doing something about it.
Absolutely. Sam, we're diving into the tough stuff.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if maybe you could tell us a little bit about a moment where you have felt overlooked, where you have felt unsupported, and how you got through that, how you navigated that experience.
Yeah. I'm glad you provided kind of a trigger warning space. This isn't an easy conversation, but the most clear in my life is I'm a survivor of what's called conversion therapy. Conversion therapy is when you try to change an LGBTQ young person into a straight or cisgender person, and it's still legal all over the country. And when I was going through it, it hadn't been stopped anywhere. My parents loved me so much, but were told that the only way that I would live a happy, productive life would be if I was straight. And so even though I didn't understand what this was, I didn't understand why they were doing what they were doing to me, and I didn't understand, honestly, that they were doing it from a place of goodness, I was experiencing lies, being told I was alone and that I would never find love. I was, physically hurt, trying to make me think that it will always be painful if you, go down this path of life. And so I'm really grateful that I had enough like self-resilience of a to thine own self be true moment of I have to get through this moment knowing that in the future I'll be okay, but I'm not okay right now. And it was really important for me. My mom found me in the middle of a suicide attempt, and I had to kind of come to grips with, I can't hide this, right? Like this is not my sexuality nor my mental health, right? Like this was like closets on closets on closets, right? Which I'm all for a walk-in closet, but not this much, right? And that's where I think my space comes from. Like, I get to now work to make sure that never happens to another young person. But that was excruciating. Like, there is nothing like watching your mother's eyes realize she was about to lose her child because of a decision she made to try to change that child from who they truly were. to be the most unsupportive because you are literally trying to erase.
Yeah, and Emily, I mean, you must have gone through similar experiences as well. We've talked about that a little bit. Do you want to chime in with that?
Yeah, no, certainly nothing to to parallel conversion therapy, but I think there, in the disabled community, right, there is so much expectation, like in so many communities, right, about what you are and who you should be. We've talked about this a little bit, Chasten, but so often in disabled spaces, able-bodied folks either expect you to be an inspiration, or they expect you to, you know, not exceed their expectations. So it's they're proud of you for getting out of bed in the morning, but they just expect you to, you know, not contribute to society, not want to go to that mall, not get married or have relationships or drive or work, or and any time that you exceed that, there's some kind of like inspiration, you know, associated with that. So I think there's just so much wrapped up in people's expectations of who you should be. And I'm so grateful that I had supportive parents and a supportive family, but they were navigating society's expectations and ingrained ableism too. So it's just, it's an ongoing struggle, but so grateful that I had resources and active allies, verb allies in my corner to get me through. And by no means do I have it all figured out, right? But knowing that there are spaces that I can turn, places I can go to recharge, is so, so valuable.
Thank you, Emily. You and Sam. Sam, I've been following you for a while. And Emily and I have talked about this topic before, and I think we need to keep talking about it. It's this idea of inspiration porn. Yes. That your mere existence is enough. When, Sam, you are out there doing critical work in the community. Emily, you are out there contributing, especially on a college campus where kids need you to show up for them. But you are often kind of overlooked or just sort of snapped at, like, thank you for existing, but you are so much more than a human being on this planet. Can you both talk a little bit about that idea of inspiration porn?
It's exhausting. I'll start with just, I love the messages. I love the messages from a young person of, I saw you, I could be me, this was my experience. Like that should never stop.
Right.
But the idea shouldn't have to be that they shouldn't have to see me in the first place to feel that way and get that space. And so when you become the only reason that some of these individuals get to be that space, the pressure to consistently be ready for that conversation is exhausting. One of my favorite stories is I walked into Disney World in my stilettos. I have 52 pair of heels. I love stilettos. They're very important to me as a way of expressing myself, right? And I walked into Disney with them, and I would later get a message from a mom being like, oh my gosh, my child saw you in heels. It was so wonderful. And like the story went viral. Everyone's going nuts about the kid in heels in Disney. And I was like, yeah, but I was going to dinner. Literally, it was just like a literal stopping in, seeing some friends, and like going back out. Like my world didn't revolve around this experience, but now I'm being painted as you better be grateful. You better be ready for to keep inspiring. You better always be on and exist beyond. That's where it just, I love it. I love being a person who can validate others. Like letting yourself know that you're not the first and that there are others out there. Huge. Right. But it is exhausting. Sorry, maybe that was a little bit too honest. Maybe that was a little too real.
Please be honest. The only thing I'm gonna red flag is, you walked to Disney World in heels?
I did.
I came to Disney World in tennis shoes.
It's valid. It's valid. It was not the most comfortable, but I looked really good. So it looked really good.
Bet.
I don't know about you. I don't know about you, but the other piece of that inspiration porn that I think of, and it goes along with the vulnerability fatigue, is just people seeing you, and instead of seeing themselves in you, being glad that they don't see themselves in you, right? Even if they don't say anything, you know, they don't think, don't have anything nice to say, so I'm not going to say anything at all. But they're thinking, right? Like, your presence makes me feel better that I am not you, that I don't have a disability, or that I'm not navigating a space in a chair, or that I'm able-bodied. Like, or you often hear like a common just pitfall in inspiration porn is like, well, I shouldn't complain because at least I don't have to do X, Y, and Z with a disability. Like, that is not, I'm not here to make you feel better about yourself. Like, this is, I am just trying to navigate this world as a person, not always doing it very gracefully, but certainly giving it my all. And again, to your point, hoping that people see themselves in me, and see like a positive role model, or something that I didn't have when I was growing up. But oh my gosh, it's the folks that are like, you are just so brave for being in this Target today. Like, I'm just here to buy some candles, to look around. I'm just trying to have a Sunday. So anyways, that's exhausting, because you know, you can see in people's eyes, again, whether they say it or not.
But maybe you both could help others who are watching, give them some tools for how you can respond in situations where people put you in that uncomfortable experience.
Oh.
I mean, I'm a nerd, right? So I always use statistics or data to try to start the conversation, which is, thank you first for respecting me as I am. I'm gonna go to the not, again, I generally, there's a lot of people who hate me for existing, so I generally just don't give them much mind.
That's
but
great.
To the people who are like, oh my gosh, all this kind of moment, I start with a good thank you. I'm a, as you were saying, Chasten, the good Midwest in me is, right, as a Kansan, it's like, thank you, right? Like, thank you first, and know that you've just done something that helped save my life, right? Trans and non-binary youth who have their pronouns respected, half as likely to attempt suicide as those who do not. So as a person who uses they and them as my pronouns, like, when someone respects my pronouns and says something like that, I start with that's not what a lot of other people get. So you helped, in a small part, save my life by treating me with an honor and respect. So I appreciate that. And then I also always give them the, not every trans person or non-binary person is going to look like me. The person sitting right next to you, yes, I'm in my stilettos in Target. Why? Because it's the pandemic and I've not been able to wear them anywhere else. But you need to know that the person sitting next to you who doesn't necessarily be in the stilettos needs to be given that same level of respect. So again, it's that whole, like, honored to inspire, but also know that the person sitting next to you could be just as inspiring if you give them the chance to actually, like, know them. So sorry, that seems a little mushy, but like, that's how I kind of do my, it's not a deflection. I do actually take it in, right? Because I get so much hate, right? That, like, remembering the good, like, oh wow, that server just liked my outfit. Like that's a good, that makes me feel validated, that makes me feel good moment. But also trying to share the love of, like, if we could validate the person, you know, who, let's be honest, isn't maybe so vulnerably fatigued, right? Like, is actually just trying to exist. It's there, nothing more, nothing less. Just that's where they are. Maybe that would be a little bit easier too. So anyway, I hope that helps.
I think you hit the three most important words. Can we just? Can we just?
Amen. 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 Amen.
I know we have already gone way over time, and I appreciate it, which means, like, this just needs to be, we just need to roll this into a dinner eventually when we can all be together.
Yes.
So I know specifically, Sam, if I really want to get to, if someone is watching right now, if someone from the LGBTQ plus community is watching right now, and they are struggling or they are in crisis, what resources are there for them?
It's so important to remember in the moment of crisis that we're not alone. That's your first thing. The reason that people can get through moments is recognizing that someone somewhere cares about them and that they're not alone. So if you're a person watching this, or know someone, which is all of you, who may be going through something like this, it's important to kind of be a bridge, to be that person who can connect them to a resource. We may not always have the answers. I loved that earlier you talked about that conversation in the car. We may not always have a person who knows what to do in that moment. And so having a resource that we can connect a person to is like the definition of a lifeguard, right? So one of those resources can be the Trevor Project. We 24/7, 365 have, a lifeline that's been there for 20 years, always ready to pick up the phone. But if you're a millennial like me and you personally can't stand to talk on the phone, text and chat 24/7, 365. You never have to hear your voice. And for a trans and non-binary person, that can be really great. Not having to hear your own voice in a moment of crisis and just text out what you're feeling, really, really powerful. And of course, social media spaces. We have an opportunity like Trevor's Space, which is a social media place specifically for LGBTQ youth to just find support for each other. Finding those kinds of resources when we're in moments of crisis can be really validating, because it can say, I just need someone to listen. I don't have all the answers. You don't have all the answers. I just need to know that in this moment, right now, I'm not alone. So if you're watching this, know that you're not, right? That there's always going to be someone there to pick up the phone.
Thank you, Sam. That is so important for everyone watching this afternoon to know, this evening, what's time? You're never alone. I know there have been many times in my life where I have felt that I was the only one. I literally had never met another gay person. When I was growing up in Northern Michigan, I just truly thought something was twisted and broken about me, and didn't even have the ability to think that there was this bigger, wider, queer world out there. And many of the people that Emily and I were so fortunate to meet on the campaign trail were in similar situations. Weren't in a safe space to come out, felt like they didn't have anyone to turn to, and also allies who felt like they had no idea how to take the first step. And I think what we've done this evening is model what taking the first step can sometimes look like, and that's talking to a friend, although we're talking to the internet at large, so that can be scary. But making sure that our friends know that we are a safe space for them, that we are willing to listen. And sometimes, as Sam mentioned, we might not even have the toolkit. We might not even be able to help someone navigate a space. What we can say is, I don't know if I have all of the tools to help you navigate this, but what I can do is listen. So I hope that after this evening, you walk away maybe with a little courage to open up about what you're going through. This has been a really, really rough year for everyone. You are not alone in any of your feelings right now. And I know I'm even getting through the feelings of gaining the COVID-19. So wherever you're navigating, you're not alone. This is the 121 series sponsored by the Mental Health Coalition. And it's about finding that one person that you can have these conversations with. And I want all of us to think about how someone has shown up for us at a low point and what they did to make a difference in your life. Let's all keep talking. Let's keep reaching out to the people in our lives that we love, letting them know that we love them. And let's keep creating these spaces that are welcoming for everyone. Emily, Sam, any parting words for Instagram this evening?
I guess I would always end with we started the conversation with validating the vulnerable, and we ended with helping the vulnerable be validated. Like that one person who can like listen to you and be ready. So I think it's a beautiful circle that I really hope we all take to heart. We don't just, when someone is vulnerable with us, we need to be also a little bit open to a thank you for sharing that. I think that would make life a lot easier for folks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I would just say practice that verb allyship. Today, if you were on this call and you don't feel like you are in a space where you need support, go out and do the supporting. and reach out, be an active ally to those around you. Tell the people that you love that you're there to listen, because maybe they don't know that. Know that you're not alone, and that you've got people around you that are here to help.
Absolutely. Emily, Sam, I appreciate you both so much. Thank you for taking some time out of your Sunday evening to be here. And everyone else, thank you for listening, and thanks for going out there and doing what Emily and Sam charge you to do, be those active allies. So have a wonderful rest of your Sunday, and I hope we all get to talk soon.
Be well, darlings.
Bye.
See ya.